My Big Fat Diet Book by Richard Mason. Chapter 5. Food, Alcohol and Hospital. I think from the year 2000 to 2003, my life was one big eating disorder. I'm surprised my body didn't suffer from only eating the small amount that I did. Maybe the big lapse in energy was part of it. I know now it wasn't normal to eat that little, but it was worth it to be really slim. That's what you have to do, isn't it? Eat lots and you become very fat. Eat very little and you become very thin. This is my stupid assumption. I never knew there was a middle ground or any other ground, to be honest. As thin as I was and in control of food as I was, I still had lapses in my perfect silly diet. Once every couple of weeks, I would have a binge night. This was something what happened every 2 to 3 weeks, one night of the week. I'd go out and I'd buy some crisps, some nuts, maybe some biscuits, hide them in my room as if they were something illegal. Then when the time was right, usually late at night, midnight, when everyone else was in bed, I would go and get them out of the drawer and tip them into a big bowl and eat the lot, usually washed down with a big bottle of cider or fizzy pop. For anyone reading this who knows what binge eating is, it's a session where you feel high while you're binging on the food. This only lasts about 10 seconds after your last mouthful. And then after those 10 seconds, the feeling of panic kicks in. What have I done? Then you start thinking about the amount of calories that you've just crammed into your body, and real panic sets in. Back in 2000 to 2003, I would have these binges and then exercise like mad the next day, and eat very little that next day too. I could do this and no weight ever seemed to go on. It was like I cancelled out the binge session with exercise and starving myself the next day. There were the odd times I tried to make myself sick, but it didn't work. I've never really been good at making myself sick. I hate being sick anyway. I would never make a good bulimic. I managed to keep these kind of binges to myself. No one ever knew. I'd hide the wrappers and packets in the bottom of the bin, and no one would be any the wiser. Sometimes I would come in the house late at night and really fancy some peanut butter on toast. But I knew if I made just one piece, I would make 5 or 6. One night I got the peanut butter out of the fridge and looked at it. It smelled gorgeous. Really nice, really tasty. My mouth watered, but I loved being slim, and eating a load of this on toast was not going to keep me slim. So I got some washing up liquid and poured it into the jar of peanut butter, stirred it round with a spoon, and then put it in the bottom of the bin. No way was I going to touch this now. If I ruined food, I wouldn't touch it. But if I didn't, I knew I could retrieve it out the bottom of the bin. Sometimes I'd put packets of crisps or biscuits in the bin, showing my great control over food, only to go and get them out half an hour later. Retrieving food from the bottom of the bin is not something I'm proud of at all. I remember back in 2002 when I went out for a night out with some friends. I was driving, so I wasn't drinking. They all told me how good I looked and asked how I kept so slim. It was a really good night and I really enjoyed it, but when I got home, it was about 1:30 in the morning. My father had bought an absolute massive bag of nuts, salted peanuts. In fact, I've never seen a bag of peanuts so big in my life. It was as big as a bag of muesli, or even bigger. My dad had opened it and had a few handfuls out of it himself, then left it in the utility room. As I walked in, I saw it and started helping myself to a couple of handfuls, then a few more, and then I took the big bag into the living room and sat with it on my lap, stuffing them into my mouth while downing some fizzy pop. I must have ate them constantly for about 40-45 minutes, maybe more. I kept trying to put the bag of nuts back, but they tasted so good. I eventually put the bag back, and I must have eaten half the bag. Half of that massive bag. Nuts are really high in fat and calories, and I felt so guilty for this binge, and knew I'd have to work really hard to get the calories off the next day. The next day was definitely a starvation day. Also, a very long day of using my exercise ski machine that I had back then. This was only a minor setback, Maybe actually a medium-sized setback. But one thing I worried about, even though I rationed these binge nights to every now and again, they were starting to happen a bit more unplanned. This was not good. As time went on, they happened more frequent, and by early 2003, I was binging more, and the weight was harder to keep off. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't getting fat, I wasn't getting chubby, I was just putting on tiny amounts of weight, and only me could tell. No one could tell apart from me and the scales. But to me, only a few pounds over a 6 month period was horrific. To someone who'd been constantly dieting for 2 to 3 years. And what was worse, the feeling that I was slowly losing control of my weight. Even though it was only slow, I had this awful feeling I would lose control in a big way and end up the size of a house. In early 2003, I started writing a new album, but did less gigs and talent shows. The glamour of music and singing seemed to be fading fast, and by late 2003, I'd probably put half a stone on, maybe a little bit more. I could still wear the same clothes, they were just tighter. I'd made some new friends also in the music business, and used to hang out with them quite a bit. They all drank and smoked heavily. There was lots of wild nights out, followed by hungover days, and also meals out, where I ate what everyone else was eating. My strict diet was becoming not so strict anymore. 2003 was filled with far too many drunken nights and binge sessions, and I was probably very unhealthy, even though somehow I was managing to keep the weight down. It was very stressful. The year was a love-hate relationship with food and exercise. I felt I was putting on a few pounds. Maybe my weight fluctuated between half a stone up and down, and I would do silly starvation days to get the weight off. But something inside said I was just letting go of the control that I had over my eating habits. This was a scary time, as I started to put a few pounds back on, bit by bit. To be honest, no one really noticed that much. I just began to look more normal, but to me, I hated it. I was once with a producer friend taking a break from working on some album tracks. He went into this shop after dropping off his wife in the local town, and he came back with some crisps, chocolate bars, things like that, and threw some my way and said, "Got you these." I just looked at them for about 2 minutes while he tucked into his. I then opened the crisps and the chocolate bar and ate them. I felt so guilty while eating them. And to him it was just the norm, a bit of harmless chocolate and some crisps. But to me, the fact I was eating them again, in the daytime, was bad. I got invited out a lot in 2003. Sometimes it was to the pub, sometimes it was to a party or a barbecue. I would turn up and hit the drink as soon as I got there. It didn't take much to get me drunk, as I was still fairly slim. The night usually ended up with me falling out with someone, though. Everyone gets a bit argumentative when they're drunk. There were lots of Saturday and Sunday mornings spent waking up feeling like crap in my best friend's spare bedroom, slowly worrying and remembering what I had done or said to people the night before. Then to be told a while later that I was probably not going to be asked back to a certain person's house again. I didn't care. I once went on a holiday with some friends to Wimborne, Dorset. I got the train to theirs and then they drove. For some reason, there wasn't any taxis waiting near the train station, so I decided to walk to my friend's house with a big suitcase and other bags. It was a lot further than I expected, and by the time I'd got there, I had this awful pain in my side. Anyway, we went out on the night out in town before we went on the holiday. Also a meal. The next morning of the holiday, I felt really rough. It was awful. I was urinating blood. I think I told my friend and they said, "Oh, you will be all right once we get there. Drink plenty of water." And I thought to myself, yeah, it might pass. I thought I would just drink lots of water. Anyway, luckily I wasn't driving to Wimborne. But as we stopped at a little chef, I was feeling worse. My friend's car was tiny and there was 4 of us sharing an apartment. By the time we got there, I was in agony and went straight to the bedroom. My friends came in and were a bit shocked. I was having a severe attack of kidney stones again. But it wasn't until night time I would let them take me to hospital, where I spent the first 3 days of our holiday. It was awful. I was on morphine and I didn't know where I was. I remember being shifted about in the early hours of the morning from Poole Hospital to Dorset. It was awful. I was in some A&E department at Poole, and just before they moved me, some poor woman in the next cubicle had been doing handstands with her kids, and she had fell funny and broke her back or her neck. I can't remember which one it was, but they told her it was very, very unlikely that she'd ever walk again. I thought to myself, there is always someone worse off than you, as I heard her screaming and sobbing through the curtains. I eventually got out of hospital late on the Monday. Now I could actually enjoy the holiday, well, what was left. But stupidly, I didn't cut out the alcohol, and I didn't eat that healthy either. I wasn't going to let a stay in hospital affect my holiday. I didn't get too drunk every night, but we all still went round the pubs and clubs, etc. But somehow I managed to make it through the holiday without any more pain. They gave me some tablets for pain and anti-inflammatory. They all seemed to help stop the infection and the pain, and I did enjoy the holiday. I was careful, but not as careful as I should have been, drinking alcohol and still smoking. Another friend who was doing media at the time offered to make a music video for me. This was at Belton Tower in Grantham in Lincolnshire. A really tiring day. We'd all been out the night before discussing what ideas we had for the video and put down a plan. It was like a celebrity lifestyle. As I said, we went out the night before and had a few drinks. I didn't get too drunk. I knew how to film a video the next day. The video is now on YouTube. It's for a song called Cover Me. If you look closely, you can see the bags under my eyes. One of the silly diets I did try in 2004 was the apple diet. I think I saw it in a newspaper or magazine, and it was a celebrity, I think it was Gwyneth Paltrow or somebody like that, who'd recommended it. The apple diet. It sounded good, didn't it? I do like apples, and all you need was apples. So off I went to the supermarket, and I bought as many apples as I could bloody carry. Different sorts, red ones, green ones, yellow ones. I thought, I'll mix it up a bit. Anyway, made my way home, and the next morning I had the first lot for breakfast. It was okay. Apples and water. The diet was literally eating as many apples as you wanted all day and drink nothing but water. On day 2 you could mix things in like a slice of wholemeal bread and low-fat cheese and some salad. But for the first day I thought I would just try apples. So as you can imagine, by evening time I was quite bored. After I'd had my ration of apples for tea time, I felt really hungry and thought, oh God, I just needed some proper food. The apples didn't fill me long at tea time, so I had a cup of soup, some Kit Kat and some bread. That was the apple diet officially over. I'd give it a good go though, well, until night time. End of chapter 5.